This FedGov Today program is sponsored by Zscaler and Carasoft. On this edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose, the next generation in the evolution of electronic warfare, a new strategy for computing at the tactical edge, and the Army's PEO-EIS pushes faster on digital modernization. Welcome to FedGov Today with Francis Rose. The Army says its transformation in contact model is changing the way it develops and fields electromagnetic warfare capabilities. The service says it's helping get out of the legacy requirements writing process and develop EW in a more iterative way. Colonel Leslie Gorman is Army Capability Manager for Electromagnetic Warfare Capabilities at the Development Integration Directorate for the Army. At TechNet Augusta, she tells me the Army's several years into the effort.
It is how we get after modernization of the Army out to 2 years. How do we get those forces out into the field within, 0 to next 2 years? How do we train? How do we fight? How do we operationalize our capabilities on the battlefield? So it's very much in proximity, and it is a iterative and a very quick paced, meant to be an agile process that we see as we transform the Army.
Mm-hmm. In what ways are you trying to transform the Army, and in what ways does that model help you to do that? Is it just in operations? Is it just in tactics? Is it in technology? All of the above? Something else?
I would have to say it's all the above. As the director of Army Capabilities Management for Electromagnetic Warfare, I'm charged with being able to bring those electromagnetic warfare capabilities to the Army. Mm-hmm. But in the forefront of my mind at all times is how do we operationalize these capabilities on the battlefield? How do our soldiers need to train? How do we, what are their policy concerns, if there are any? How do we update our doctrine to ensure that the generations to come are also able to effectively fight using the capabilities that we have on the battlefield?
Mm-hmm. What have been the inhibitors, if any, for you to be able to maximize the potential of electromagnetic warfare?
Well, you know what? That's a great question, Francis. So I have to say that the Army, electromagnetic warfare kind of took a back seat for about 10, 15 years. You saw a little bit of it during OIF and OEF, not nearly to the extent that we saw in probably prior wars, especially like, say, World War II in Vietnam. However, what we've seen, especially some of the lessons learned with Russia, starting way back in 2008, and what we saw with Russia, going against Crimea, Georgia, and then against the Ukraine in 2014, we'll be able to observe their use, their weaponization of the electromagnetic spectrum on the battlefield, and then in our current fight that we're seeing between Russia and Ukraine, we are certainly drawing off those lessons learned that help us inform how we need to approach the transformation in contact with our soldiers, with capabilities, training, and operations.
What do you see going on in these various theaters of operation now that other forces are involved in that you can draw from that and apply to what you want the Army to do?
I will tell you that the way that both Ukraine and Russia have really weaponized the electromagnetic spectrum, not only military communications, but commercial communications, how they are leveraging innovation in a very rapid pace to be able to get capability and target each other on the battlefield. And electromagnetic warfare has been it's been transformed. Oftentimes, in the past, we just thought it was going to be barrage jamming, right? But that impacts our own communications. And so you are seeing a very deliberate tactics that are on the battlefield today that we're observing as we are, from the United States standpoint.
Mm-hmm. A lot of the conversations that I've had here have wrapped EW in with cyber and with information operations. Do you see that from your perspective on the Army side too?
Absolutely. I feel like you can't canalize you can't, you cannot canalize these capabilities separately. There's an integrated effort. It's funny, we just had a panel on ubiquitous sensing, and we were talking about these invisible effects, right? But they are impactful. And to your point, you will see where there may be a cyber-enabled EW effect, or there is certainly RF-enabled cyber effects. And then obviously in the age of information and where we are with social media and what that looks like in the battlefield, you then bring in that information advantage and how that is how information advantage is able to pull those levers between your cyber, your electromagnetic warfare, and other information operations on the battlefield.
Is that the explanation for the emphasis now on electromagnetic spectrum, the fact that you can do things now with it that you couldn't 10 or 15 years ago, as you alluded to earlier?
Absolutely, yes, sir. We are, it was, this past year, it was posited. How do we gain electromagnetic spectrum superiority on the battlefield? And much kind of like, I want to say that the analogy that was used was the old, own the night. Think back in the early 80s with night vision goggles. And then how do we bring that mindset, those capabilities, and how do we fight in that manner in the electromagnetic spectrum? So how do we own the EMS? And that certainly that brings in to bear electromagnetic warfare, but it also brings in electromagnetic spectrum operations. And there's a convergence of how we operationalize those two disciplines on the battlefield.
What is driving that convergence, and what's the benefit to the warfighter? What edge do you get over the enemy in that?
I would say that, we are operating in a time where we are in a congested communications environment. There is a proliferation of not only different types of communication on the battlefield, but there is a proliferation of sensors on the battlefield. And so how we're able to leverage the networks, the sensors and the capabilities, but then also potentially there's the counter side of that with the adversary, how they're also able to leverage those same aspects to be able to deliver effects and impact operations.
What is your vision, or what is the Army's vision for electromagnetic superiority? It's simple to say we want more or better or whatever than the opponent, but I imagine the reality of it is much more complex than that.
I would agree. And I will tell you, I think a lot of it, so I think the capabilities we're starting to see those capabilities roll out. You probably had a few conversations about next generation command and control. But there's also some spectrum awareness capabilities that we're rolling out. We're also, to help us see ourselves in the battlefield. There is some electromagnetic warfare planning capabilities as well. A capability that's been around for a bit, but it's going through a software modernization period right now. And it's called EWPMT, where we're able to really bring a data convergence between that S2AS capability and EWPMT to see ourselves, see our own signals in the battlefield, but then see the adversary's signals of interest on the battlefield as well, to help us sense, understand, and decide what non-kinetic effect we want to deliver against that signal.
You can read more about transformation in contact on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, a new strategy for computing at the tactical edge. FedGov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment.
Innovation doesn't wait, and neither do we. At Maximus, we solve problems, streamlining operations, delivering solutions at speed and scale that drive measurable results. From strategy to execution, we simplify complexity, building trust through expertise and innovative technology. Every service, every time. Efficient government delivered. We don't follow innovation. We drive it. Maximus.
In enterprise DevSecOps, you often hear folks talk about the golden path. And that path is the enterprise-approved way to get software to production quickly. And you might have some variations on that path, just based on the criticality or security concerns regarding that system or application. But ultimately, the organizations that are succeeding is removing humans from the loop to the maximum extent possible, really to reach that pipe dream, pun intended, of continuous deployment, not just continuous delivery.
Welcome back. Leaders across the Defense Department list computing and data analytics at the tactical edge as one of the biggest problems they need to solve. Hansong Bae is Public Sector Chief Technology Officer at Zscaler. At TechNet Augusta, he tells me data at the edge requires new architecture and new thinking.
The first instinct is do what we've always done, which is get a network out there, get a circuit, get a router, configure it. And that's not going to work anymore because the contingencies change. It's temporal in nature. So by the time you get a circuit out there, it could be over, done with, or somewhere else is the hot spot. So the idea that we can fight a war, and by the way, Napoleon said, you know, the army travels on its stomach, right? Mm-hmm. So in the army, it's always been beans and bullets. Everybody understands beans and bullets, but now it's beans, bullets, and bytes. Bytes is just as important as the beans and bullets. So how do we be agile with that information so that the commanders on the ground, down to the platoon squad level, can get that information? So my proposal would be that the network use any and all network, even adversaries' network. Because in a true zero trust scenario, it's just transport. You don't need a bespoke circuit, mil-spec as they say anymore. Starshield, Starlink, 5G, Starbucks, local deli, local PC rooms, whatever you can get your hands on, it'll be protected. And so use it. And I think that is a fundamental mind shift and transformation that the department finds hard to do.
Why is the department finding that hard to do, and what do you think would facilitate that?
So that is the Newton's first law. Yeah. Object in motion stays in motion unless acted upon by an external force. I've been building SIPR. I've been building NIPR. I have my network. I feel good about my network. I have my routers, my configuration, my firewalls. So there's a sense of confidence and comfort in doing, and, you know, truth be told, don't break it if it don't, you know, or don't fix it if it ain't broke, right? And what I'm saying is, even though you can get a circuit out there, even though you can get routers and configure all of that to a router jockey, that's easy to do, but it takes time. And in a contingency, a modern contingency, that's the one commodity you don't have is time. So instead of building networks, deploying networks, start deploying zero trust and make it easy on yourself with a transport. Now, I'm not saying the network is not important. It is, but it's like breathing. When we woke up this morning, we didn't think about breathing. We just do it, right? So it's important. But just like, you know, if we stop breathing, in 90 seconds, we're dead. So I'm not saying network is not important. I'm just saying it's a tool. It's transport, it's commodity, use it however and whenever without having to deploy a bespoke network.
You talk about speed, and so does every uniformed person that's been with me this week so far. What continues to drive the speed that they want? Your point is correct. They don't have time for deployment, a lot of fooling around. What narrows the time frames that these?
Yeah, so I think it's less dependence on equipment for communication. I'm not talking about tactical gear. So imagine if you could just go walk into a store, buy any local 5G, throw it in there, and know that it's secure, right? And you're hiding in plain sight. Those are now a possibility. It's doable. Technology has finally caught up. So now our mindset has to shift to catch up with technology.
I see. You also talked about the computing at the edge and data at the edge. And another concept that pretty much everybody in uniform that I talk to is discussing is expecting that environment will be contested on some level. What's the implication of that for all of the things that you're talking about?
So having local presence, the data local presence, and having the local communication is absolutely critical. One of the things that I think vendors think about is they don't understand what contested means, but also it's the mission dependent. So think about a mission where you communicate, you move, you shoot, and then you communicate. During that time, in the beginning, you communicate because they don't know you're there. At the end, you're communicating because it's over and done with. But in that middle, you cannot have something that the data is not local. It has to reside with the rifleman. It has to reside with the platoon leader, the platoon sergeant, company commander. So that data should be saturated and populated before the mission, be with the soldiers, and then afterwards, as fast as possible, exfil that data out so that the commanders can have common operating picture.
The other advantage that it sounds like the concept that you're discussing would give the services is the next biggest challenge, I guess, that people talk to me about is the challenge of edge-to-edge data exchange rather than edge-to-base out to the edge again.
That's right.
And it sounds like that would
Absolutely.
Be a solution
So when we talk about zero trust solutions, it's exactly that, right? Headquarters to soldier and or hub and spoke, as we like to say. But a true zero trust solution follows the soldier and the data, and anything and everything in between is immaterial, right? So in that world, then you're protected. Me talking to you, me talking to the squad leader, the team leader, the company commander, and above. So it's independent of the location, it's independent of the device, and it's certainly independent of the network.
You can read more about edge computing and edge data on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, the Army's PEO-EIS pushes faster on digital modernization. FedGov Today with Francis Rose. We'll be right back.
There are platforms that allow for application development based on visual design tools and, pre-built components. So it's just much simpler the way that these low-code platforms come together from a development standpoint. You can take the pre-built components, you can pull them together in your development environment, and it's a much different way than how traditional programming languages are used for application development of old. And the result are several advantages that I think are noteworthy. First off, you can develop much quicker, and you can which drives much lower cost from a development standpoint. And then you can get to market much quicker. The key, I think, for the DoD, the other advantage I think about is really the creation of exceptional customer or soldier experiences that low-code, no-code platforms can provide. They allow for this very easy to follow process, self-guided path, I guess I'd say, through an application. And it's this super intuitive user interface that gets created based on the platforms that make them very easy to use.
Welcome back. You heard from Colonel Leslie Gorman earlier in the program about how the Army's modernization effort is impacting her work on electromagnetic warfare. Army leaders tell me digital modernization is affecting almost every aspect of their work. Brigadier General Robert Mikish is Deputy Program Executive Officer for Enterprise Information Systems for the Army. At TechNet Augusta, he tells me his PEO is well on its way to digital modernization.
We actually started a digital transformation in the spring of 2023. And what that meant for us is to, really starting to pivot from a waterfall way of delivering software for the Army into Agile. And that meant a lot of things, a lot of change for our organization. First and foremost, it started with what practices we have, getting used to Agile practices, learning a whole new language, and really changing our mindset. Even our culture, and then I think the last part of it was our partnerships. And what I mean by that is we're used to working with industry partners on delivering software and the like, but it's now incorporating our functional or business owners within the Army, and lastly, users, and making them part of the Agile process. That was a change. That's, as anyone would say about digital transformation, culture is the hardest thing to change, and that was a challenge, and we continue to work at that today. But we've really put a concerted effort into adopting Agile across the entire portfolio, making a lot of changes of our software programs into the software pathway now, and reestablishing some key relationships. The first one is how we, the government, communicate and contract with the software original equipment manufacturers, the OEMs. We learned a lesson, and that was we wanted to have the OEMs on our team on a direct contract, so that these commercial software solutions we're providing or procuring, that we can actually use them to the best of their ability, and we get advisement by the OEMs to do that with our systems integrators. That has been absolutely wonderful. And then, as you're tracking most recently, big changes in how we do contracting. So we're really kind of spurring ahead, embracing commercial solutions offerings and what the Army Contracting Command out of Aberdeen Proving Grounds has done. So we're really excited about where that's going. And we've kind of dipped our toe in the waters of using CSOs and some OTAs now with how we do software.
You talked about a couple of cultural issues there, and it strikes me you're probably thinking about it from two different ways. You're thinking about it internally in the Army and also thinking about it in the way that you interact with the vendors. What are some of the best practices that you've found to solve that cultural dilemma, either internally or in your collaboration with industry?
I'll start with internally. What we found is when we knew we needed to learn Agile practices, we actually asked our functionals to join us at the class. We actually went through the formal training together. And during small breaks and how humans interact, it was amazing that we found it as we learned together coming outside. That really helped a lot with the cultural changes because it was new language to all of us. That's a practice we're trying to continue moving forward. So internally, that really helped. A lot of lunch and learns. A lot of times to kind of break bread in a way and just hear about these new things and bring lots of different industry partners in to share their lessons learned, case studies, if you will. That's been very helpful. With industry, we did similar things. We asked them to work on their training. We had a lot of back and forth communications with them, and then really tried to be over communicate what we were hoping to get out of Agile. And my boss, the PEO, would say to us, hey, it's often we really want to practice Agile, not just in word only, but actually in the ceremonies that we do. So that's been helpful to kind of think to make the change.
That's been one of the biggest challenges, I think, for government organizations, military or civilian, is, are you really doing Agile? Or are you talking about Agile? And I wonder how you've stayed connected to the end users who you're delivering the software to, your mission partners within the Army, to make sure that they know that you're iterating and to make sure that they believe that you're actually iterating.
It's absolutely critical that we have that connective tissue and that we're showing that we're delivering incremental software. It doesn't have to be complete. That's the part of Agile. A minimum viable product is just that. It's not done yet. We asked two ways to do that. One was we asked the functional people to join our team, the actual sprint teams, as product owners. They embraced that, and it was an amazing moment to watch senior non-commissioned officers back briefing Army senior leaders on their area, the sprint teams. The second part of it is we went to the users, and we actually asked to have Army units identified as early adopters for the software, working directly with them, not only in having coders actually code and do the iterative back and forth. Doing so, we can see if the software is connecting with the users and get instant feedback, and then within 2 week sprint cycles, be able to make a change. And through the retrospectives, part of the Agile process, you get that immediate feedback from the users in that retrospective of whether you're hitting the mark.
Is it also important then to go back and say, you told us you wanted this, or you wanted this to not do this anymore, and here's how we've done that, so that they know that their feedback matters to you?
Being transparent is important. And I think we have to have an honest two-way conversation about that. Sometimes he asked me to do that. Well, maybe they did, but when they actually used it in the intended environment, we had a great example of going up into Vermont in the snow with the infantry, and maybe it didn't work the way they want. So that's okay. That's failing early, and it's okay to iterate on that and come back and make another try. So I do believe that's a really important part of what we're doing.
When you come to a show like this and you collaborate with industry at a place like this, what is a good outcome for you to go back to base and say, we're better, we're going to be better because we fill in the blank?
Yeah. I think conferences like this give us a chance in one area, especially with use of time. I can meet so many different industry partners and see what they're working on. And then they listen. It's two-way listening, right? I'm hearing what they're working on and how they're pushing the envelope of technology and innovation. And they're listening to me in terms of the requirements, and they can meet. It's a networking piece. So really meeting who within my organization is doing industry days. When are we going to have those? So timing of it. And then set expectations. Hey, when you come see me, or if you're going to write a white paper, these are the types of things I'm looking for. I think they feel, I know I feel that way, that we'll have a better outcome the next time we meet.
We had the CIO of the Army on FedGov Today a couple of weeks back, Mr. Garciga, and one of the things that he and I talked about was a software acquisition pathway. And he said, well, we were kind of already doing that before the Secretary of Defense put that memo out. I imagine you saw that up close and personal, being where you are, that, yeah, when that came out, we're already on the right path. We're already on the right track. Is that a fair observation on my part?
Absolutely. We were a little ahead of the game on that. And right, it's nice to be ahead of the game every once in a while. We were adapting to that pathway. Was a pretty easy shift for us because we were trying to do it already. Our leadership was already, my leadership came from industry, and they were teaching us the Agile ways. So the Agile ways absolutely adopt that. And it allows us to stop some of the paper bureaucracy of it. And also, there's an expectation in that pathway that you iterate, that you deliver things incrementally, that you seek a user agreement. That's a wonderful part of it. It's a piece of paper that some may frown upon. I don't frown upon it. I say, this is our contract with each other. Yeah. We're going to have a two-way dialogue here. You're going to be a participant in this, and that's really worked well as we go through the process.
You can read more about PEOEIS on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today continues in a moment.
I think what industry needs from government right now is, to your point, what's coming down the line? What are their pain points? What are they most afraid of industry not securing this? We kind of saw this with CMMC, right? Our technology is being sold to China. It makes them nervous. So if we know what it is, we can kind of, come to that conclusion. We also need to be trusted. It's always kind of been us and them. Like I said, been on both sides. I get that, right? And we need to come together, and we need to be trusted that the input we're going to give you, right, is going to be secure. It's going to be cloud native. The beginning, we all know we were picking it up. It was a little difficult to get security around it, but we're now going cloud native.
FedGov Today TV returns next Sunday morning at 10:30. I'm Francis Rose. I'll see you then. Thanks for watching and have a great week. If you want insights from agency and industry leaders on the latest topics in technology, management, workforce, defense, and acquisition, sign up for the FedGov Today podcast with me, Francis Rose. I release new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday, so you'll stay up to date on the issues that matter most to federal government leaders. Listen at fedgovtoday.com and everywhere you get your shows. Don't miss out on the conversation. Follow the podcast today.